Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll hear inspirational stories of heart-centered leaders who have awakened to their higher purpose and taken that leap of faith to follow their heart and make an impact in the world. Get ready to be enlightened, empowered, and transformed with your host, Jennifer Spohr.
Just really super excited to welcome to the show today Joy McAdams. She is the co-founder of MedSnake Media. She helps medical practices achieve a growth mindset through relationship building. She's also an Ironman competitor, a mom of 5. She's a LinkedIn influencer with over 70,000 followers and 1 million views monthly. She's a podcaster of Raising a Boss Babe. She's a weekly guest on Business Beyond the Boardroom radio show in Tampa, which also has a podcast. She definitely has her hands full, and she manages to easily and effortlessly manage it all in my eyes. Welcome, Joy.
Well, I don't know about easily, but yes, it gets done. It gets done. Most of it gets done.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? I found from my own experience, that anything that we want to accomplish in our lives, it really does require precision. It requires discipline and determination.
It really does. You know what I found too is your struggles and your stress levels. This hit me the other day. It's all relative, right? Because, like, for instance, when you first start having kids, you have one and you're thinking, oh my word, having one child is so overwhelming. And it is, because you're in that moment, and compared to not having any, it's super overwhelming. But then the more you have, then all of a sudden, if you only have one, it's like, man, I don't even have kids, right? Like that level changes of what you think is a challenge. And, the same thing, how stressed are we at work some days, but it's nothing compared to like a surgeon who is like, has life in their hands, right? Like, that's stressful. And then when we compare that to what we think is stress, it's not really quite stressful, right? So it's all so relative, and it's so important that we keep that in mind. And I think if we keep that mindset, it kind of helps us minimize and not feel so overwhelmed. And then it also puts us in a position to learn from people who are handling a lot more than we are.
It's so true. I mean, perspective really is everything. We have total control over our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. You were in a much different place several years ago, right? Tell us more about that and how you moved forward.
Sure. Well, and I've alluded to this before, but it's been about 10 years ago. I went through a divorce, and I had 3 small kids. They were about 3, 5, and 7. Actually, 2 just turning 3, 5, and 7. And at that moment, it was such a defining moment for me, because with that came such a struggle. During that year of me going through the divorce, there really, I alluded to this. I threw out there, I was like, I put a reality show type challenge out there. I was like, imagine if you had $5,000 in cash, a credit card that you could run maybe up to $10,000, and you were fired, so you had no job references, no connection. Also, no support from your family whatsoever, no help from them. And you had to try to live on that, while still taking care of kids that are very small. And it was a really, really challenging time. And it was one of those moments that it truly was sink or swim. And it really showed me at the end, what I was made of and what I was capable of. And, it came down to the last moment. And I spoke about this a couple weeks ago, and my 3, some of my points were, when you get hit with something really hard, that's a big challenge, even if it's something that comes out of nowhere, the first thing you have to do is keep moving. I don't care how slow you're moving. I don't care what it looks like, but just don't stop. Because the minute we stop is when we'll fall into depression, or when we'll start going backwards. So it's so important. And I made a comparison to my first physical challenge when I did my first marathon. It was the same thing, when that first point hit me where I wanted to quit and there was this overwhelming pain, I went back to this moment in my life and remembered, just keep moving. While you're figuring out what to do, just keep moving. And it's so important that's one of the first things we start with is don't stop. And because in moving, you will come across other opportunity and you will get the strength to keep going, but you just can't stop. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. And there's just so many thoughts going through my head as I'm listening to you speak. And one is that, when we meet challenging times, we can have a tendency to think that it's just up to us to make everything happen on our own.
Right.
But God also comes into play with that, right?
Sure.
Like
Absolutely.
our faith, we have to trust that things happen for a reason. And I really feel like faith and our mindset are literally like 90% of the journey.
Sure, no, absolutely. And I think for me, the biggest struggle in that moment was really having a sense for God's grace, because I grew up in such a legalistic upbringing that my view of God was really distorted. And I grew up with this, like once you start headed a direction that, maybe isn't the right direction, or you make a wrong decision, kind of feeling like God's going to turn his back on you. And until you crawl back, there will be no grace. And that's so, that's the furthest from the truth. So during that year as well, experiencing and meeting people who had a true view of God, who truly extended grace to me, where on the other hand, some of the people closest to me, there was no grace. It was like a complete cutting off. And they didn't give that moment to realize that, maybe joy's in a time of struggle, but we can still extend grace. So yeah, through it all, I think that was one of my biggest lessons too, is just truly seeing that our God is also God of grace. And sometimes that's how he brings us back to him. It's through his grace. It's not necessarily always through, like this lightning strike, if we start headed the wrong direction. Sometimes it's through his love that he draws us back.
Absolutely. And I also find that we have to experience a certain level of contrast in our lives in order to have clarity and in order to understand the value and true gratitude.
Sure. And it's all about gratitude. It absolutely is. I mean, I think on an everyday basis, any challenge we face, like I was comparing it to that relative comparison, if you look around and realize there's so many people facing so many things that are so much more challenging than what you're facing, you can always find somebody. It really puts you back into a state of gratitude and helps you, be able to overcome whatever challenge that is and stay in the mindset to be strong enough to do it.
Absolutely. I believe that every experience in our lives serves a purpose. I sort of alluded to that a little bit earlier. Is there any one moment or event in your life that you feel has been significant in shaping who you've become today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would definitely say that during that year of, truly being on my own and I grew so much because I truly grew up kind of being instructed and kind of with the mindset of a woman can't make it by herself at all. Like you have to have a man in order to be able to be protected, to survive, to be able to make it financially, to be able to do anything. And during that moment, even though I knew in my heart that, truly all we need is God, we don't necessarily need another person there, my mind kept going through that because that's what was ingrained in my head. And so getting through that year, one of the biggest moments at the end of that year was at the end when I was literally down to my last penny and all I was going for in the divorce was the house, because that was just something that I envisioned getting back because it was like the kids' stability. And, so all I was going to be getting was a house and with a big mortgage. And it was literally 3 days out to me having to make that first mortgage payment. And if I didn't make the mortgage payment, the house was going to go back. Even if I was late, it would go back to my ex-husband. And I still had no job lead, nothing. I mean, it was insane. But literally 3 days before, I got a message from a friend that was like, hey, there's somebody interested, wants to talk to you about helping with their marketing. And I went to that meeting and I was so much more bold, right, than I had ever been, professionally, because the old me, which might have been timid or shy, really threw out a proposal that was more than I would have ever asked for. And after throwing that out, I also needed it right away, right? So I thought, well, it was actually an attorney. And I was like, don't get the concept of a retainer. So I threw out there, not only a big number, but I need this as a retainer. Like, I need it now. And when he said yes to that, I mean, the overwhelming lesson there too was always do every business transaction as if everything is relying on it. Because if that's your mindset, you will be so much more bold. You will be so much more confident. because I had never seen that side of myself. And it came through, right? And it came through, and that was like the direction that changed everything and showed me you will be able to make it. God's grace is upon you. You will be able to rebuild a whole, new business and career all over again. And so that's something I was able truly to take back to business as well, and remember, do every transaction as if everything's on the line, and it really shifts your perspective of business.
That's so true. There's just so much wisdom in that. And you can not only apply that to business, but in every area of life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the work that I do is actually helping people who kind of feel like they're going through the motions in life to answer that call to do more and to take back their joy and sense of purpose. So many of us, and I used to be in this place years ago as well, just kind of go through the motions of life, thinking that we have to live life in sort of this cookie cutter way and to settle. And we almost kind of, I feel like, get into this space of apathy almost, and having that perspective of living every day is so important, because you never know when it can be your last day. I know it sounds cliche, but it's really so true. So anyways, just what you're saying about business, I really feel like that can be applied in every area.
Sure, no, absolutely. And, moving forward, that's why I felt, 10 years later, like you were saying, when you're in apathy, when you're comfortable, that's when you're in the most dangerous type of position zone, because you get comfortable. And that's why, so 10 years later, that's why I came up with this idea of, let me challenge myself physically, as I did my first marathon. And that kind of recreated that whole type of situation in my life that produced incredible growth, because I put myself in a position to be uncomfortable. And because there was so much success from all of that, I realized that that's just something I'm committed to now, is to always be challenging myself and always be putting myself in a place of, being uncomfortable, so that I continue to grow. And that's why I'm big on that, growth mindset that I always put as my hashtag.
And you have accomplished so much. I mean, I just find you to be so inspirational. I just love it. I just love everything that you're up to. And I'd love to spend just a couple minutes talking about your new podcast. I had the opportunity to listen to a couple of episodes, and I just think what you're doing there is great. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this. Number one, because it's really making me stop and spend time with my daughter. She's the youngest of the 5. She was already, before we even went through the divorce, before anything, she was already like this really attention-hungry, strong-willed child. And so when we blended a family, we blended a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old. Now she went all the way down to the bottom of 5 kids, with so many more people, like competing for my attention. Now she really had an issue, right? So she's always been that one in our family that like needed that love and attention. And it's a challenge. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting. And so, throughout all this, though, I've learned so many lessons. And she's also very animated and outspoken. So she made for the perfect co-host, and we're putting together a podcast, just talking about life and how we've maneuvered through all these different things. And then just, I think, just showing too the relationship between a mom and a daughter, and her little spunkiness. It makes for some good conversations and good listening.
It really does. I had a lot of fun listening to both of you, for sure.
And some of them are probably going to be an all-out disaster just because it's life, but it's been fun. And I've already gotten some really good feedback that a lot of people can relate, and it's inspired them, to take that extra step to really, really be intentional about your relationships with your kids. And
yes. Absolutely. There are a lot of people out there, right, who might still feel like they're going through the motions in life. They're feeling called to do something to make a bigger impact. What is your number one piece of advice for those people to be able to take action forward?
I would say absolutely just the fact that you feel like you have a bigger calling in your life. Don't suppress that. Don't put it down, because I did go through a time period where I felt like it was wrong to want to make good money. It was wrong to pursue being successful professionally. Like it was this mindset of you just need to be content where you are, just be content. And, I was always torn because I felt like that was wrong for several reasons. One of them being too, well, I'm a mom, I need to be there for my kids. Money is the root of all evil, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that money is the root of all evil, it's that the love of money is the root of all evil. And I came across this book it's an old school book. It's The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Waddles, something like that. And in it, he's actually a preacher, an old time preacher. He kind of lifted the blindness of my eyes to the fact that God actually calls us to be successful, to make the most of what he's given us, to not sit on those talents and items. And that actually in making money and in, becoming wealthy, you actually have more freedom to turn around and help others and to show others how to get there and to give back, tremendously through philanthropy or whatever. And if that, for some reason, that was just so freeing. I kind of was on the mastermind with that book, and hearing some of them talk as well opened my eyes. And that was one of the things too that just gave me this release and freedom to go for those things, and my goal was always to be the most efficient I could with my time, to make the most I can, to continue to grow professionally while still having that flexibility and freedom to be the mom I need to be and to be there for the kids. And, I've really been able to elude that family work balance to a seesaw instead of balance, because balance is impossible and you're always going to be frustrated. It's like a seesaw. So some days work is going to be way up and family might be down. And other days family might be way up and work is going to be down. But as long as you keep, swinging that seesaw, that's where you're going to feel the most satisfied and the most content and the most successful. So, be open with your family about days that work's going to be up and remind them that you're doing it for them. And, be open with your work, that you do have family responsibilities and that they are number one priority. And I think if you're open on both sides and everybody understands your goals, you can really get as close to what people might call that family work balance, but it's actually, that family work collaboration.
What you said about balance and flexibility is so important, especially the flexibility, not just in a family dynamic, but in pretty much every area. When we become too rigid, we're limiting ourselves from so many opportunities. That's where I feel like following your intuition or following your gut is really important in terms of looking at where there is opportunity to be more flexible. I feel like that's just one of the many ways that God speaks to us, is through that intuitive guidance.
Sure. And it's amazing, when your mindset truly is to make money, to be able to, provide for your family, to be able to give back, to be able to give back to the church. Like, when that's truly your goal, it becomes about helping people. It's amazing how the financial success will come. I truly believe God puts a blessing on that, and how just the way people treat you changes too. Like, I'll give you a quick example, and this is so crazy, but I went swimming this morning, so I put my little wallet in my swim bag because I knew I had to re-up my membership. I left it in my swim bag. So here I am out working today, driving all around, and I went to buy lunch, and I don't have my wallet, and I haven't uploaded Apple Pay and all that. So when I got to the counter and realized that, literally they just gave me my lunch for free, and I have like $1 or something. They wouldn't even take any money. And I was like, it's so humbling, because it's like a reminder that, what, God's got your back. He knows why you're out here. He knows you're working. You're not asking for free handout. And that seems to happen to me all the time, which is so crazy. But I think it's just a reminder always from God of, it's humbling, because it's so humbling to walk up there and not have any money, right? But then when they give it to you, it's even more humbling, because it's like, what? It's not about what you can do for yourself. I'm going to bless what you're doing, and I'm going to take care of you even when you can't take care of yourself. So it's just crazy. I could tell you so many stories like that, but it truly is true. When your goal is to be out there and help people, everything changes, and you will be successful financially as well.
Absolutely. When we focus on service, everything else falls into place, truly. And you had mentioned earlier in our conversation that, he actually wants us to be successful. And that is all true. He wants us to be prosperous and abundant. When we feel struggle or doubt or fear on our journey, it is us that we're creating that struggle through our lack of belief, essentially.
No, absolutely. And, there's always going to be times that, there may be financial stresses, and it's just going to, as a reminder of this isn't where your security is, And, I think even in giving, I truly believe in the big blessings in tithing and giving to your local church. And even in, writing that tithe every month, sometimes it's just literally that reminder of giving up, that your security is not in money. Just like I'm out here today, literally, if anything happens, I have no money with me, and it's just such a reminder, the security is not in money, because I could be taken away at any time. But when you do give it and you give up that security, God's going to totally bless. And it's, I'm constantly learning lessons every day, and I'm so grateful for, what I've been learning and seeing along the way.
He really does have our back. I mean, it just blows my mind every time I think about it. I mean, you said that you had so many stories. I do too. There are just so many experiences I've had that surpass logical explanation, But Joy, I've enjoyed speaking with you today so much.
I know. I can't wait to meet you in person.
I know. It's going to happen.
Let's make it happen for sure.
So if someone wants to connect with you or learn more about what you're up to, where is the best place for them to go?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at jmcadams5. Then obviously on LinkedIn, I spend a lot of time here on LinkedIn. It's Joy McAdams. And then you can also go listen to our podcast, Raising a Boss Babe, or you can hear my weekly presence on Business Beyond the Boardroom. It's a podcast, and it also airs in Tampa on a few radio stations.
Thank you so much, Joy, for taking the time to be on the show today. I just loved connecting with you.
Oh, thanks. Until next time.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for listening to the Awake and on Purpose podcast. Please visit us and subscribe to the podcast at awakeandonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can connect with your higher purpose and take that leap of faith to make your impact in the world, visit us at jenniferspor.com. And while you're there, be sure to join our email list for exclusive offers and a weekly dose of inspiration.